Good morning. This is Debby Montgomery Johnson, your host of Stand Up and Speak Up, a show that is about each and every one of us. Many of us have something we're hiding, something we're ashamed of, something that through no fault of our own or through our own making, we keep hidden, and that in turn keeps us hidden from each other and the world. Good people go through terrible situations. Wise people know when and how to let it go. Everything that happens to us helps us grow. And while it may be hard to see it right away, the most important thing to do is to change your perception about your circumstances. Stand Up and Speak Up features ordinary people just like you and me who've been through extraordinary times and then found the courage to step out from behind their smiles and speak up about their experiences and the lessons gleaned from them. We are dedicated to encouraging you to remove the mask of embarrassment, shame, and possibly guilt, and to being your very, very best self. Well, I'm really excited. My guest today is a friend of mine, an author, an international best-selling author, a publisher, a speaker. I want to welcome Miss Peggy Hanson. You there, Peg?
I am here. Good morning, Debbie. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, friend. You're up in New York, and I'm down in South Florida, and we've got everything covered in between. So thank you so much for being here. I want to tell people a little bit about you, Peggy. You are an international best-selling author and publisher, and we're going to speak about that a little bit more in a few minutes, with over 30 years of experience in all aspects of writing and publishing, including business ghostwriting. Since her vast knowledge and expertise is an often asked-for resource, she's written and published 50-plus books and near double that number in authors. Peggy Lee is the CEO and founder of Courageous Women Publications, a one-stop shop for all of your writing and self-publishing needs. She says, we make your tell-all easy to tell all. And isn't that the truth? Peggy and I know each other from Women's Prosperity Network. It's a women's organization started down here in South Florida, but obviously it includes everybody up in New York and Chicago and all around the country and the world now. And Peg is actually working with me on my Audible book. So I'm so excited for you to be here because we pumped it out there to everybody about, will Prince Charming really rescue you? And I'm sure people were wondering, okay, so Deb is the voice of the survivors for online dating scams, but where does Prince Charming come into Peggy Lee's story? So what's up with Prince Charming?
Well, first of all, let me tell you, Prince Charming that I'm talking about here is not the Prince Charming I have for my husband. So there's two different Prince Charmings.
There you go, but there is a Prince Charming in your life. Mine too.
There is one. But in this particular instance, this Prince Charming came to what I thought was going to be my rescue back in probably about 7 years ago now, back in 2013. And that was when I was really starting to get into the publishing business, finding editing jobs, writing jobs, anything that I could possibly get my hands on. And one day, I received an email. It was a blanket email, and it looked, pretty valid to me. And it says, hello, I have a document that needs to be edited. The document is titled Racism and Prejudice, and it's 15,799 words.
Wow.
The deadline date for this document is 17th of December, 2013. Please confirm your availability to me. So I thought, wow, that's kind of cool. And he gives his address, Michael Jake, something Ellis Avenue, Inglewood, California. I mean, he had it, So to me, that seemed valid enough. And so I wrote him back and I said, yes, I'm available to do that for you. Please schedule a call with me by going to my conference, my scheduler, to make an appointment. And so that we could, talk about details and such. So it was pretty interesting from that point on. And I got the document to take a look at it, and seemed like strange I mean, it was actual text, and it actually made sense, but it seemed more like a government-type document that was really kind of a not really high-level document, but there was just something not right about it. And I thought, well, this is kind of weird. But I still edited it anyway. And they sent me a check. I think I quoted them like $800. And so they paid me. They turned around, got the check. But the check that I received at that time was for $2,500. And it was like, he sent a little note inside the check. I mean, it was even like FedEx to my front door. I mean, that's how fast things happened. And, because he says, well, we want to make sure that you have your money, in time enough, for the work that you did. It was brilliant editing work, and we want to hire you for more projects. And that's why we're sending you a check for more than the amount that we agreed upon. And I'm thinking, wow, this is like heaven sent here, because we were, my husband and I were in a situation financially where we needed that money. And it was to me gold at that time. We were getting ready to close up our house. We were moving in a couple of weeks to a different city, and this money would help us get a U-Haul rental for the house and to move from one place to the next. It just meant so much. So, but there's still something that was just kind of nudging at me, and I didn't exactly know where it was. My son, I had been working at a bank back in the mid-'80s, and so, I know pretty much about the banking system. Of course, that was 20 years before that. But I still knew some of the processes that went on in the banking. And my son was working at a local bank in our hometown at that time. And so he and I talked about the check, and I said, what do you think about this? And he says, well, he says you can deposit it, and just see, what happens with it. And then the weird thing is that I started getting text messages, emails from this Michael Jake, who was so thrilled with my editing expertise, asking me if I deposited the check yet. And it was like every hour to 2 hours I was getting notifications from him. Have you deposited the check yet? Have you deposited the check yet? I need to know that you have deposited the check so we can move forward, da-da-da-da-da-da. And therefore, my favorite word is, the dance began. And so it was interesting. So I thought, I'm just going to, let's be positive, because I'm a very positive person. I want to believe that there's good out there. And so I deposited the check. And then it was like, man, it was, maybe like the next morning, it still just didn't sit right with me. And he was still asking me whether or not I deposited the check. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to put a hold on that check. Because what I did is I called the bank in California to see whether or not the check would clear. Mm-hmm. And at that time, the Privacy Act was starting to be enforced, where you could no longer call and get a check okay, like what we used to do back in the banking system years before that. And they would only tell me that the account was active, but they wouldn't tell me if there was enough money in the bank to cover the check. Because if I deposit it today, tomorrow the money might not be there.
Right.
So the more I thought about that, I just didn't know what to do. And it was just something was telling me, just stop it, So I went to the bank and I put a hold on the deposit that I had just done, because I wanted to make sure that and wait until the check clears. So I put a $2,500 hold on my checking account so nothing would bounce. And, I wouldn't spend that money then until I knew that everything cleared. Well, one thing led to another, and after, I don't know how many emails, maybe 30, 40 emails back and forth, we connected again, and I said, you know what? I finally told him, I said, the money is in the account. And then that's where things turned. And he says, about the check, he says, we've decided that we're not going to move forward, so we need to have all the money back. And to create a card number or something like that, so that they could access the funds right away, because I got the funds right away, so they should have the funds right away. And I said, I don't think I want to do that, so I mean,
because they were going after your money at that point, because it's in your bank account. They think it's your money. They want it back. But once it's taken out by them, right?
Yeah.
You're out.
It becomes theirs. It's theirs,
their money.
And I've lost out.
Yeah.
So, and finally, I remember one of the conversations. By this time, were we talking on the phone, or were we just texting? But no matter how the communication went, because it was a long time ago, and I totally forgot about this, because when you invited me to the show, and it was just like, I don't know if I have, I don't have any romance scams to talk about. But I said, but I do have a scam, a financial scam, that would be very pertinent in today's world and everyday's world, I guess, because a lot of people are looking to start up businesses. So they're hungry for money. I was hungry for money. And, when I saw that this guy was ready to pay me for several projects, it's like, I'm in. But then, one thing, thank goodness, I had some sense that something was wrong, just like you did. You started feeling that something was off, kind of like from the beginning a little bit. And then things really got, off track. And I said, I think you're just a scammer. I point blank said the same thing, it's just like, I don't think you're on the up and up. I think you're trying to scam me out of my money. And he said, he started threatening me and started saying, we're going to send the cops after you for stealing our money. And it's like, who's going to steal whose money? You're taking my money. And then after I threatened to go to the cops or whatever, I just stopped. I blocked him from my phone, and I just stopped answering any of his emails. And nothing happened, of course, because, the threats were empty. There wasn't anything that he wanted to point back to him or, the business he was in.
Right.
So I was very, very, very lucky that I paid attention to my intuition. It took me a little bit because I was so excited for new work, new possibilities, that this Prince Charming had come in and he was going to take me away, financially and help me build my business. So, and that's it. But nothing happened. So I called the bank, stopped put the hold on, and sure enough, the check came back insufficient funds.
Yeah.
And so nothing happened with me. And they suggested to, I think I called the local police department, but I don't remember. And I don't have that documented, not documented like you have everything of your scam documented. Yeah. And but someone suggested to call the state of Wisconsin, where I was living at the time, and call their fraud department, securities and fraud, I guess it is.
Right.
And so I did that, and I talked to a very nice gentleman for for a little while. But he says, there's nothing that we can do. He says we can't trace these online scammers because they have things so buried deeply, and rerouting from ping to ping to ping. It could be 50, 60 pings, for going around the world, that they scramble their network so good that they are undetectable. basically.
Right, but the important thing for us today, because this is still happening, that, sending the check through the mail, that's a felony. That's you can go to the Postal Service. There's a fraud department in the Postal Service. I'm not sure they can do anything about it. But that check, because I remember working in banking too, the checks that come in look so real.
Yeah.
They do a really good job. And back when I was in banking, we would print, when we cashed it or deposited it, the checking account number would go on the back of the check. And then the person would get the check back. Well, then, of course, they have your checking account number. I don't believe they do that anymore. And most people don't even get the copies of the checks back unless they pay for that. But because they look so real and the story sounds so real, any business person is vulnerable to this kind of deception, no matter how smart we are, right? And you're a smart woman.
Absolutely. I was in the banking business for 5 years. I should know better.
Well, shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda. I even checked out the routing number, and sure enough, it matched the bank.
Yep.
They're
clever.
They are clever. What they do, what the fraud guy told me, is that these scammers will find an old check somewhere, however it is. It could have been online. It could have been in the trash or whatever, which is another reason why I shred your information. And they'll make up a block of checks that probably are so old that the system doesn't recognize that they have been used before. So they think it's a clear, it's a good check. Anyway.
Well, you've got to be careful, and in today's world, with all the checks being sent out in the mail recently, the scammers are wild on that right now, and and they're looking for people's checks. So, and they like to go into mailboxes. That's why people need to have direct deposit rather than getting a physical check. I know my parents are on the line here, and they actually got a check from the rescue here. And I looked at it, and their check obviously was good. But the duplicate checks, the scammer checks now are equally as good. They just don't have the right wording on them. But you just have to be diligent because you wanted that money to be real. So
I did.
For a moment, your brain knew that money was real, right? And then your gut kicked in. But thank goodness you listened to your gut.
So far as, depositing the check. But then the gut kicked in, like you said, really kicked in and said, nah, there's something goofy about this. So,
but thank goodness you listened, like you said, you listened to your gut, because otherwise you would have been out the money, and he'd be laughing to the bank, laughing all the way to the bank.
Yeah. So I would have, anyway, yes.
Well, no, for me it's just interesting because I do get people saying, well, I'll never get scammed, I'll never get taken, and I'm thinking, we're all going to be susceptible at one point, vulnerable to it at one point. It's not necessarily romance or it's relationships. We like connection. We want connection. In the way things are today, people are so isolated at home that they're looking for connections somewhere, and it could be online, it could be in a letter, it could be wherever, but we may not be talking to someone that's really, person's obviously real, but not the personality we think we're talking to, or dealing with. And even they've gotten very, very creative that they can take videos on. I'm not on those. I don't know if it's Instagram or whatever, but they actually can take videos and they'll send them to people. And this is really interesting. My husband and I were watching a show the other day, and I think it was probably from Italy. And initially we were watching and we were seeing the mouth, the lips going, and we heard the voices. And they weren't quite synced up. So we thought maybe there was a streaming issue, so we turned the TV on and off and we brought it back, and it still happened. Well, then we found out that the show is actually in Italian, and it was the voiceover in English. But your brain watches them talking, and unless it's really unusual, you think that they're talking in English, and they're not. And so when I've had women that come to me and said, well, I saw my guy, I heard him talking, I'm thinking, the mind, I heard this recently, the perception of reality is sometimes greater than reality. What we want to see, what we want to hear is what we're going to hear, regardless of what the reality of it was. So
absolutely. You know, and we do. We see what we want to see. And there's a good story for that, to add to that. It has nothing to do, but I know what you're talking about, you know, watching those movies. We've done the same thing, and it's just like, is this English or is this dubbed over? And the closer we looked, you know, we saw that it was dubbed over. But the story that I want to talk about, you know, for the showing the reality of things. Now, you know, I consider myself intuitive. I don't, you know, I'm not a seer. I'm not a clairvoyant of that. I'm clairaudient. I hear things, you know, that come down from what I consider the divine, but I'm not, you know, I don't really see things, you know, in front of me. But when we moved, it was that time that we moved after the scamming part, we were into our new home, new apartment, where we moved to, and a door had locked, and we could not get into the one bedroom where we had stuff. And it's just like, well, this is absolutely crazy. The door's locked from the inside, and however that happened, we still have no idea. But we're looking for a way to unlock it. And I said, there's no keyhole. You know, we don't have a key for the bedrooms, you know, to unlock them from the opposite side. And Mark is like, well, usually, my husband, he said, you know, usually there's a little hole in front of the knob on the outside, you know, where you can stick something in. Mm-hmm. And I said, there's nothing there. I don't see it. And he went and looked at it, and he said, well, that's really strange. Usually there should be something there. And he didn't see it either. And we're like, okay, so now what are we going to do? Because, you know, a lot of our stuff is in that spare bedroom where we unpacked, you know, put everything, you know, to unpack everything. And so we're scratching our heads. It's like 9:30 at night, and it's just like, why don't we just quit and wait until morning, you know, and figure it out then, you know, so we can get some decent sleep. Well, the next morning, come out, look at the bedroom door, you know, that's locked, and I said, honey, you're not going to believe this, but the hole is right there. And he says, no. And I said, yes, look. We're both like in astonishment, thinking, what the heck just happened, you know? But we saw what we wanted to see that night, and I started it because I couldn't see the keyhole. So just by saying that, Mark was convinced that there wasn't one, so he didn't see it either. So I mean,
well, the whole gremlins came in.
Absolutely. So then, you know, he found something to diddle it with the lock with, you know, and we were able to get into the bedroom next day. But it's pretty amazing how strong that thought process,
yeah,
you know, and that brought a whole different new awareness to me too, is that, holy cow, we do see what we want to see.
Well, it's that whole...
Our imagination is really strong.
Absolutely, and the rose-colored glasses. There's a great advertisement on TV right now for one of those little flip things that flips down from your dash, from your, I'm having a brain cramp, you know, right in front of your eyes, your sun shield there. And it flips down, and it's got this yellowish kind of glass or a film that you see through, and it opens up colors, and it I'm not articulating this very well. My brain wasn't kicked in there, but it was just reminding me about how we see what we want to see, but sometimes we're blinded by the glare. And if we put down a screen that cuts the glare, we see a whole other world, which is right out in front of us. It was there before, you know, when the sun was shining in your face. So again, we see what we want to see. We see what we can see. We see with our blinders on. We see different things. You know, we see what we want to see. And it leads into our stories. So I'm going to kind of segue out of that fraud issue because that was part of your business and that was a learning experience. But
absolutely,
you do some incredible work now in publishing and in writing, and I know it firsthand because we're working together. But I want to congratulate you, and one of our callers also is on the line. She's one of your authors. You guys made best-selling positions in 2 categories yesterday on Amazon for your new book. Congratulations. I hear all the claps in the world. Can you tell us about your book and how you did this and this is not your first book. This is multiples. I said that in your bio. But give us a little idea of what this book is about.
Yeah, this is volume 6 in a series called Courage Under Siege. And it was created for several different purposes, but the main thing was so that people can share their stories. And by people, I mean mainly women, because we need to share what we've been through and share where we are now, from the pain to the gain, and this particular volume is Hurt to Healing. The other volumes had Uncertainty to Clarity, Duress to Success, Flight to Light, Bewilderment to Enlightenment, Adversity to Victory. And it's all about women who have prospered and have gained clarity and just where they have been. And they are at a point in their life where it's time to tell the story. It's like that Ani Anand poem, the bud, you can only stay closed for so long, and then you are forced to open up. Nature helps us to do that. And it's a natural process, but they don't know what to do. They're not ready to write their book, but they want to share their story somewhere, somehow, and this gives them an opportunity to do that. So over the 6-volume series, I have published 42 women who have shared their individual stories of showing where they were as a kid and how, anything that happened to them, from child abuse to being poor to being, as I was talking about earlier, a clairsense, clairaudient, clairvoyant, any types of the clairs for who have the more metaphysician type of aspects to their life, where they see angels, where they talk to them, to the mediumships, where people talk to dead people, the whole Sixth Sense thing, I see dead people. But, for purposes of good, not, for things like that. So, and I believe that if everybody knew more about the person who was sitting next to them, there would be a lot less fear. And by sharing our personal history, our personal traumas that have turned into triumph, we can do that. The more that we get to know our neighbor, the better the world will be, because we are better together. And I was a Toastmaster.
The what? I'm sorry?
Several years ago. No, that's fine. I was a Toastmaster several years ago, and I got into the leadership part of that group. Toastmasters International it first started out as a speakers association for men only back in 1928-ish, somewhere around in there. And in 1972, I think it was, they allowed women into the organization. You think, wow, 72? They were in, the organization was in place for 50 years before they allowed women to come in. It's a good time because, women need to share their voices. They need to be heard, especially today. And I heard so many stories, not only from the women in the Toastmasters where I was a leader, but I heard men as well. But all the stories, I'm thinking, nobody's going to hear these stories. They're just going to stay right here in this room. And there's got to be a way to get the stories out into the world. And so and that's how Courage Under Siege was born. But my mission is to help women more so than the men, but I do help a few great men. There are some that I have published, and they are doing their part to help everybody, women included, to get that hand up and to help them succeed. So I'm very picky about the men I work with.
Well, it's really, it is very, very important. Now, I heard yesterday a quote. It says, believe your story has value, and in that you need to dare to be vulnerable. And I know that firsthand. You know, when my story came out, I had to believe in myself that my story had value for one other person in the world. You know, I didn't need to be speaking to everybody, but that one person. And that's the same with the women that have written in your books, is that they have a story that if they believe in themselves, and that's the tough part, because, you know, we were asking here, how can you find your passion and purpose in writing? So many of us who are potential authors, we're all potential authors, are afraid of what people are going to say. We're afraid that our story doesn't mean anything, or it's not going to help anybody, and we're afraid to even start. So how do you get your authors to start? What's the first step?
To just start, the very, very first thing that I do tell my authors and all my people who are writing with me is just to breathe. Just breathe. You know, take a moment, take a couple of deep breaths, just cleanse your system out of any of that negativity that's coming in, and the deep breaths will help you settle into yourself. And then just write. Just begin writing. Don't edit. That's one thing that I say, too, and my authors may be a little bit tired of me saying that, but just write out what you need to write out. Don't edit anything, because the first response that you are writing is the most purest of thought. And then I have the process, though. The people that I take through the Courage Under Siege book process, it is a program. And it's a program that will help them learn how to settle into their thoughts and to pick out the thoughts which are the better to the highest good of them, of their story. You know, and just to relax and believe in what you're doing, and not that you're telling your story just to tell your story, but to tell your story because you want to help someone else, so that once they know your story and can relate, then they feel better that they can take their next step. And then it continues on, and I'd laugh and I say, you know, it's like the old Clairol TV commercial, and she told someone, and she told someone, and she told someone. And that's how some of my authors have come to me as well, because she told someone who told someone who told someone. So, I mean, it's just amazing. And even with this book that came out yesterday about the hurt to healing, I've had many people say that they love that subtitle of it, because it's so true, is that we're always healing. You know, we never per se get totally healed, but it's an everyday process to heal. And I received a note from someone about the book that had gone out this time, and it is, I don't have permission yet to say exactly or who it was, but it was a couple of items in the book yesterday from a couple of different authors. It wasn't just one author, but it was something that they said that a new awareness came on, the light bulb kicked on, and they are ready and feeling better about where they are in their life so they can take the next step forward. And that is something that I have heard from every volume that we published, and that we started back in 2017. So 3 years ago. This has all only been going on. So
it does make a difference. It does make a difference. And can you see it from an outsider when you're seeing your authors at the beginning? It's almost like a little child, and over the period of time, they're growing into a teenager and into a young adult and an adult. Can you see that progression and confidence growing in them as they get their story out?
I can. I know it's there, but they don't. And the beauty of the process that they go through is that once they get done writing their chapter, they see that. They witness that for themselves. They see that growth. And so it's just a beautiful, beautiful process of watching that child grow. And many have come back and written their full entire books with me.
Perfect.
To tell even more of their story.
I found with writing, when I wrote my book, was that once it's out on paper, then it's somewhat separated from your emotions and from you. And now it's just become a story. It's still your story, but it doesn't consume your life. It doesn't take over your life, especially something that was hurtful. Because that can keep you down, and I don't like being a victim or being called a victim, but many people are in that victim stage where they feel like things happen to them and not for them. And when it's happening to you, then it's like, woe is me. And I think by writing the story, you can see it from a different level, a different perspective, saying, well, that was an interesting thing that happened. So now let me move on. And that's what I love what you do, is you help them to move on, because now they're in a position to help somebody else that may be where they were prior to writing their story. And that's very liberating.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is such a deepening and rewarding experience for everyone involved. For me as the publisher and editor, for the author, and then for the person who reads the story. And they may not know these people, but they'll buy the book because they do know someone in it, or it's speaking to them for whatever reason. But it's helping so many. And who knew? I had no idea when I started this, the very first volume 3 years ago, how it was going to go. But somebody said, are you going to be doing another one? I'd kind of like to be in your next book if you do that. And that's the way it's been, too. And that's how each volume has happened. When somebody makes the commitment saying, I want in on the next one, then that's how the next book gets developed. So I can't say if there's going to be a volume 7 or not. I can say that there might be. It could look a little bit different. It could be something titled other than Courage Under Siege. I don't know. But it is as the author of the chapter tells their story, it becomes a very cathartic and healing process for them. Because they are not writing the story for them any longer. They are writing it to heal and help somebody else.
So if someone
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying, if someone is out there and listening to this, and they feel that that's the next step for them, how do they contact you as far as working with you or just having a conversation with you? Because that's the first thing to do, is have a conversation and kind of flesh it out. How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I think the easiest way would be just send me an email at peggylee@peggyleehanson.com.
Okay. And then I saw that we have a free gift for them too. Free chapter writing guide?
We do have a free chapter writing guide, absolutely, and that will walk you through the process that I take my authors through to help you formulate the chapter and to get an idea of like how many words to have in a chapter, what points do you put in the chapter, how do you start, kind of it's a generalization of how to do all that. So, and that you can get at bit.ly, which is bit.ly/free chapter writing guide. All one word, all lowercase.
Perfect. And that was actually on our registration page, and I'm sure if they email you, you can perhaps send that to them also.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it really is important to be able to get your story out, and it's fun to watch how people get brave when one of their friends writes their story, because then they're like, well, if she can do it, then I can do it. And sometimes you just need a kick in the pants by an author or a publisher and a guide to get it done, because there's nothing I found really is so incredible just to get the story out there and see how it touches someone else's life. Now, Peg, we're going to open this up to Q&A, because I know we have a couple of other authors on our call today, and I'd love to have them come on in and speak to us. So if you want to ask a question or come in, you just hit *6, and it puts you in a queue, and we'll get to you as you come in. And I know that there are people out there, so I guess I can unmute them too. See this? This is a learning curve here. I'm going to unmute our guests here, and if any of you would like to come in and ask a question about publishing or give us a comment about if you've written your book, I know there are a couple people out there. tell us how you felt and why you wrote it and where it is now, if it's gone anywhere. Because sometimes writing a book is really just a calling card. It gives you credibility. It gives you fun. Say, here's my book. But let's see if anybody wants to come in and speak to us. And until then, are there anybody out there? I know Peg's out there. You and I are working together right now on an Audible book,
yes,
which has been a fun experience, something that people are moving into listening to books versus just reading them. Do you enjoy Audible books?
Absolutely. Audible books is another great resource or modality for getting books out there. And because people have been, up until this point, people have been spending a lot of times in their cars, going to work, traveling and things. But even working around the house or being around the house, people still listen to things. They listen to the TV, they listen to the radio. And people are also listening to books, to help pass the time with whatever they are doing. And so if you have a book out there, I would highly recommend, looking into doing an Audible book. Please reach out to me and we can talk about that, so for something further in developing. I did not publish Debbie's written book, her paperback, but we are working together now, as she said, on the Audible book, and it's amazing. And also with this... Peggy Lee Hanson. Huh?
It's okay. I think someone came on.
Oh, okay. So with this volume of Courage Under Siege, Volume 6, this is going to be the first audio book in this series.
Oh, perfect.
And I'm having all my authors read their own chapter.
It's a really different experience reading it out loud, I found. And, you want to be perfect. Again, here's this, woman behind the smile. I want it to be perfect and say it perfectly. And it was funny when we were first doing it, I'm thinking, okay, Deb, you can't make a mistake. You can't, breathe in the wrong place. And then I realized, well, heck, she's going to edit this.
I'm going to edit.
If I goof up, she's got it. She can just go back and edit that goof out. And it turned out to be a really interesting experience listening to the story being told out loud. I almost relived it again. I mean, I did relive it again, but in a different way, because now I'm looking at it, I'm looking at the words and I'm trying to put in the emotion and the inflection of my voice, and it was really a great experience to do it, and I think you enjoyed listening to it too afterwards.
I did. And then, and especially the goof stuff. It's just, I got to start over again. So
well, I would be talking to you.
Yeah, I know. So I mean,
again,
it's fun.
If there's anybody out there would like to ask a question, go ahead and hit *6. It'll put you into our Q&A, and then we'll unmute you because we have a few more people that have come in. But being an author is an exceptional experience. I'm going to unmute my father. I hope he's listening. Years ago, my dad and I did a lot of genealogy work together. And I kept saying, Dad, write your story. He's the funniest guy, and he's my hero. He's 90 years old right now. He's Dr. Jack, works for me in my company. And Dad, I said, write a book because I want to hear, your life. And he didn't do it specifically towards the family. He wrote it through the eyes of having golden retriever dogs. And so his book is called My 50 Golden Years. He'd been married 50 years, but it was so fun to read about his life through the years of having golden retriever puppies. And the puppies would grow up, and then the puppies would be adults, and the puppies would die. And I know it was I remember when they were editing the book, he and Mom were editing the book, and every time a puppy died, they relived that, which is a tough thing to do. But then the next one would come along, and then it was just so much fun. So, Dr. Jack, are you on the call?
Yes, I am. I just was a little concerned. I got a FedEx envelope just now that's from Nigeria. I wondered what to do with it.
Tear it up, Dad. Tear it up. So, Pop, I have a quick question for you, and then you can talk to Peggy about this too. When you started writing your book,
Yeah.
this was years ago. We may not have had the technology we have today. Give us the process that you started when you wrote your book.
Well, the first thing I did was just start to, at night when I go to bed, I start to think about one of the dogs. And then I would take notes. I had a notepad next to the bed. I even turn the light on sometimes and start to write some stuff in case I couldn't remember it the next day. And then I would just jot those things down, and then the next day I would write the whole thing out longhand on a sheet of paper. And at that time, the Dragon Dictate software just started to come out where you could talk into a microphone and it would type it up on Word for you. And that was kind of fun because I can't type at all. And each night when I go to bed, I think about a different dog and so forth and what happened. And I have a remarkable memory for long-term things that happened years and years and years. 50 years ago, I can remember exact specifics that you wouldn't believe I could remember.
That is a true statement, and I like the fact that you said that you have a notepad beside your bed. Peg, do you have anything beside your bed? Do you wait? Because I know when I have a thought in the middle of the night, if I don't write it down by tomorrow morning, it's gone.
I know, it does. I used to have a pad next to my bed. I used to have my phone next to my bed. I don't have the phone next to my bed any longer. But oftentimes I get up in the middle of the night and where I have to get up and write it down. And because if I don't, I will forget about it. And then sometimes the thoughts just keep coming and I'm up for 2 hours writing. So, yes, most definitely have that. I even would take notes and things, notepad with me when I went to watching movies, go to the theater, because there would always be something inside that movie that would click with me. And I was just like, ooh, is that a good thought? So then I would make a note for that. So always pen and paper or something. And now, I carry my phone with me all the time, when I'm out and about, and I just open up a notepad document and start writing in that for all those ideas.
Say that because that happened to me yesterday. I was watching a show, and I was like, oh, wow, I really like what she just said. So I stopped it, and I ran to my desk, and I wrote it down, and I came back, and she said something else, and I stopped it, and I'm like, Dad, put a piece of paper right beside you and sit here and listen. Because so much, it was about writing your stories and believing your story has value. And I'm like, oh, that's something that we have to talk about tomorrow. So, Dr. Jack, one quick thing, though. After you wrote your book, how did you feel about getting it out in writing?
How did I feel about getting it out?
Yeah. How did it make you feel getting all that written down? And, excited, confident, you wanted to share it. Where do you go from here? Are you glad you wrote it?
Yeah, right. I didn't know what to do with it at first, and I called up a publishing company in Philadelphia, but they wanted so much money for all this kind of stuff. But I eventually did go into a small package where I bought 400 books or something. Then I had to go find 400 patients that I could sell it to.
And he's still giving them away. So it has changed. Since Dad wrote his first book, it has changed, Peg, because the stories that the book you put out yesterday is on Amazon?
Yes.
And so you're not actually collecting. That's why I think a lot of people worry that, I've got to have 500 books in my closet. That's not the process anymore, right?
That is not the process. No, you don't need to do that anymore. Especially if you self-publish, you're not required to buy 500 copies and wait to give them away for everybody. That's the beauty of self-publishing. But then there are self-publishers, like your dad, Dr. Jack, who will print them off, to be handed out because, they just want to give something away, to make people enjoy reading or make them smile, make them feel good about themselves, too. One woman that I know, she self-publishes her own work, and she prints up the books, and even though they're on sale through Amazon and stuff, she sets up her car at a Walmart parking lot in her neighborhood and lets everybody know, I'm going to be at Walmart on Saturday morning with my latest book. And she comes from an old family in the city that she lives in down mid-Atlantic states. And so people are just clamoring, for her next book because it's all historic things that they like to read about. And so she sells her books out of the back of her car.
There you go.
And so you can publish any which way you want to these days. It does not have to be traditionally. It's whatever you dream of. It's however you want to get your word out. It doesn't have to be a great, big, huge production. It can be simple and easy. And one thing I want to mention, too, about, the way Dr. Jack wrote his stories is that that's a perfect way when you don't know how to tell your story, especially if it can be controversial, is to write it through the eyes of someone else, or, tell it in somebody else's voice, or turn it into a fiction novel, but, tell your story. There's all different sorts of ways how to get your story out. It doesn't have to be your voice.
Well, that's important, too, especially if that's someone that has been hurt in a way
yes.
that it involves other people and maybe people in your family, and you don't want to necessarily out them, but the story is so important that needs to be included, but you need to protect some of the people. I mean, some people are going to out you anyway because they're mad at you, but that may not be the most effective way to do it, right?
Right.
Sometimes it's let's protect them, but let's get the story out because the story is greater than the personalities, and you're going to help so many people by getting that story out. Yeah. And that's like my book. It's called The Woman Behind the Smile. I didn't write it to make $1 million, although it would sure be nice to recapture that $1 million that I lost. But I give so many books away because I want the women in the situation that I was in with romance, relationship scam, I want them to realize that their story is my story, and the guy that scammed me, and I've got a picture of him, that's their scammer, and they're not alone. And so that starts them on the road to healing, not financially necessarily, but emotionally healing, realizing that those guys are really good at what they do, and that's their job, and I was just taken. And again, anybody can be taken at any time in their life. Vis-a-vis, hello, we're still waiting for Prince Charming.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad Prince Charming really came into your life, because Prince Charming really came into my life too in getting remarried again. But it's important that from our hurt position that we can heal, and then that we can help others heal going forward. That's the value of our stories. And
Absolutely.
I really honor you for what you do, and you've got a great business going, and you've gone from the desperate years to being there and being a valuable asset and coach and everything else to the women that you've worked with, and some of the good men.
Yeah. And the last thing that I want to say is that if you were thinking about telling your story, if you're thinking about telling your worst story, just remember, and as you're questioning, just remember that someone is waiting to hear what you have to say.
Well, we do have someone that does want to say something to us from, looks like Norfolk, Nebraska. Are you on the line?
Yes, this is Carol, but my number's Nebraska, but I'm actually from Kentucky.
Well, I'm glad you're here because we can certainly hear you now.
Yeah,
Carol, you're one of Peggy's authors.
Oh. Yes, I'm one of Peggy's authors, and I'd like to say that she has made the process of writing my story so simple that if you're thinking of writing your story, she would be the one I would recommend to go to, because I had no idea. I had worked with Peggy years back on when she was doing her dream thing. I went through her dream course with her, and lost contact. And then she sent me an email that said, I want to touch base with you. What are you up to now? And I had let a lot of things go, and just circumstances in life that just happened. And I was at a point where I was ready. And she came at the right time, and I was ready to say, okay, let's do this. And she made it very simple. And the other 4 women that were with us on this journey, we connected so well. The universe puts us together for a reason, I really believe. And
Absolutely.
we just clicked and made this book, our stories, just go out there and do what they need to do to help other people. And I really would recommend Peggy for doing this, because she's simple to deal with. She's honest and trustworthy, and she listens to our heart, so that there's no she takes time with us. She doesn't just brush us aside and make it, well, I need to get this book done. You've got, so much time, and I can't, I can't take the time. I've got other things. She sits right down, and she will have a call with you and explain things to you. And I know I've made her kind of go crazy. I'm not a technical person, and I have a lot of technical questions to ask. But yeah, it was an experience that I really, I enjoyed writing my story. She makes it so enjoyable to write it, even though it may be a very bad thing that you went through back whenever. But she just brings it out of you.
Well, writing is very therapeutic. I found that to be true.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, and congratulations on the #1 best-selling book. That's a terrific thing, and you guys can put the little patch on your book now.
Yes, thank you.
Peggy, you guys have done that on most of your books, and that's the process that you know how to do. Also, there is that process which brings great value to authors, and again, gives you that expert badge, so to speak. But it's not about that either. It's about getting it out and writing it, and just having that experience of opening up your heart and opening up just who you are and putting it out there. Because if anything, it's great. It's a great message for your family, because I know my kids didn't know as much about me as they would know if they would read all of my writings.
Yeah, and these books go international. They just don't stay here in the United States. We've gone to Mexico, Australia, India, Canada. It's Italy. It's worldwide. So your message gets out to the world, because no matter where people are, we're all the same. And
I loved how you said that at the beginning. We get to know people better by hearing their stories, by sitting, because looking at that person sitting beside me, they might look differently than me, they might sound different than I am, and all that stuff. And we're so careful about. We think about this when we raise our children when they're little. It's like stranger danger, and you don't let them talk to anybody, and which is a good thing. They need to kind of learn the boundaries. But later on, if we're all still feeling that stranger danger, then you and I could be sitting right beside each other and not talk to each other. How many times you get in an elevator and put your head down? Or you're sitting in an airplane and you kind of look out the window rather than at the person sitting 2 seats over from you. But you don't know who they are, and if you just start the conversation, I found some incredible people in this world because I was willing to smile and say hi.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I found out that we're more alike than different because of what we've been through in our lifetime. That's the value of writing your story, the value.
Yeah, and you're finding that out. With the woman behind the smile and being part of the CARES program, and women are contacting you every single day.
It's been amazing. And last night I was on a call with Dr. Tim McGinnis, the founder of SCARS, and I'm on the board of advisors right now. And he said, Deb, we need to find a board of directors. Who do we know? And I started thinking about when I was in India. I met an incredible woman from Delhi, and I met another woman when I was in Dallas, and she was from Uganda. I'm thinking, this is international. These are women that are just like me, and let's bring them in, because what we're working on, the things that we're doing are international in scope, because we're all brothers and sisters in the end. And we all have things that we need to get together and not be so distant. So, Peggy, thank you so much for being my guest today and telling us about your real Prince Charming versus the fake Prince Charming. I thank you so much for your passion and purpose in writing and working with me to get my book out, but with working with Carol and the other authors that you've had. I thank you for them. And for our listeners today, thanks. Go out there and start to write your story. Get it out, and you'll feel so empowered from the inside out. I'd like to say that this episode has been sponsored by BenfoComplete.com. It's actually my company. It's a vitamin supplement that supports happy and healthy hands and feet. We want to thank you for listening to Stand Up and Speak Up today. If you or anyone you know has been a victim to fraud or relationship scam, have them report it to anyscam.com or the IC3.com. And remember to join our Facebook group, Stand Up and Speak Up, because we have special information and we have replays of this event. I want to thank everybody and wish you a happy day. Peg, we will stay on for a few minutes, but I'm going to stop the recording right now. But thank you so much again for being here. I really, really appreciate you.
Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate you and everyone who listened today and will be listening to the replay.
Perfect. Have a great day, everybody.